That figure in the shadows? He marks the exact second where a part of our history changed forever. That was one of the moments the age of magic died, and science conquered the dark. But to understand why that victory matters, you have to understand the 10,000 years of darkness that came before him. We spent millennia dancing with a partner whose face we had never seen. Before fire, before pottery, before cities, something else was cooking our food for us. Not grains, but fruit. Nature allowed sugars to ferment on their own. Yeast broke them down, releasing more aroma, more calories, and more accessible nutrients. For millions of years, our primate ancestors followed that smell. Ethanol. And those extra calories powered the growth of a bigger brain. We weren't fermenters yet, but we were already riding on the magic of fermentation. Biologists call this the drunken monkey hypothesis. It suggests our ancestors learned to follow the scent of ethanol to find energy-rich fermenting fruit. This pre-digested fuel gave early humans the massive calorie surplus they needed to grow larger brains. We used this fungus to build the mind that invented the wheel, writing, and the rocket ships. But for the next thousands of years, we didn't thank the worker. We feared it. In the Middle Ages, brewing was women's work. The cottage of an alewife would smell of burning malt and damp straw. It was a vital work, turning spoiled grain into safe nourishment. Look closely at her tools. To be seen in crowded markets, she wore a tall, pointed hat. To guard her grain stores from rats, she kept a cat. To mark a good batch, she carved notches into her stirring stick. And to signal that the ale was ready, she placed a broomstick outside the door. Does that uniform look familiar? The hat became a cone. The stick became a wand. The broom became a vehicle for flight. Historians believe our modern image of the witch is actually just a distorted memory of these brewers. So why did the image turn evil? Simple. Men noticed the money. As towns grew, ale became profitable. Men formed guilds that barred women from their ranks. Churchmen branded alewives as temptresses. Suddenly, the herbs they used for flavor, rosemary and mugwort, were recast as witches' ingredients. The yeast bubbling in their vats was labeled demonic fermentation. When the invisible magic of yeast failed, we didn't blame biology. To steal a market, we burned the competition and called it witchcraft. But there is a dark side to this partnership continued farther than you can imagine. Yeast didn't mean to hurt us. It was just doing what it evolved to do, eat sugar and release gas. But because we didn't understand the biology, we underestimated the physics. On October 17, 1814, that ignorance turned fatal. At Mew & Company's Horseshoe Brewery, London, beer was being stored in massive wooden vats held together by iron hoops. Inside, billions of yeast cells were silently pumping out carbon dioxide, building immense pressure. They had turned a wooden tank into a biological bomb. In the afternoon, one of the iron hoops snapped. An hour later, the vat burst. The force was so violent it smashed other tanks nearby, unleashing a tsunami of beer 15 feet high. It smashed through brick walls. It destroyed homes. It killed 8 people instantly. The tragedy wasn't that the yeast attacked. It was that we didn't respect it. The courts ruled the disaster an act of God, because they couldn't comprehend that a microscopic organism could generate that much force. We were playing with a power we didn't understand, and we paid the price. But by the mid-19th century, the waiting ended. The man in the shadows stepped into the light. His name was Louis Pasteur. In 1857, he looked through a microscope and realized that brewing wasn't a chemical reaction. It was a war. Bacteria were invading the tanks and slaughtering the yeast. Science had finally identified the worker. But identifying it wasn't enough. To stop the chaos, we had to tame it. Pasteur identified the bacteria, but Hansen found the true saboteur: wild yeast. He worked to isolate a single, solitary cell of the good yeast. He purified it. He named it Saccharomyces carlsbergensis. This changed brewing forever. This single cell was the secret to the perfect brew. Carlsberg could have patented it. They could have owned the world. But J.C. Jacobson believed science should elevate everyone. He shared the breakthrough freely, knowing there would be a little bit of Carlsberg in a multitude of beers. Yeast is the most standardized, obedient partner humanity has ever known. It built our civilization. It fed our ancestors. It never asked for a reward. Before we finish, let me tell you something even more interesting. We sometimes underestimate its resilience, because this partner is practically immortal. In 2019, a team by Seamus Blackley, creator of Xbox, and archaeologist Dr. Serena Love decided to prove it. They performed what they called miniaturized fracking, injecting nutrients into the microscopic pores of 4,500-year-old Egyptian pottery to lure dormant yeast cells out. But here's the crazy part. When they tried to feed these cells modern flour, they died. The yeast was so old, it didn't recognize modern food. It would only wake up for emmer, the grain of the pharaohs. Now that's one heck of a memory. Once it woke up, they buried it underground in a replica Egyptian pot called a bedja. And the bread wasn't primitive. It was lighter, sweeter, and chewier than modern bread. They proved the ancients weren't primitive at all. They were master bakers. And their invisible partner is still alive, waiting for us to feed it the right grain. So yes, yeast is ancient. It is powerful. It is loyal. It remembers thousands of years and works without complaint. But there's still one thing it can't do. Come here, boy. Yes, good boy. Sorry, buddy. You never stood a chance. Until next time.